So if we should perceive it in a way that would be useful to us, how would we perceive a wedding in the world? We see it as a symbol of love, and in this case, a symbol of the whole relationship. And we see it as a way, a part of the path that we walk. Because the idea that to attach to nothing in the world, to realize that everything is the seeking of pain, pleasure, and death, could put you in a position of pure apathy. Because you still have the notion of, I am a doer of some kind, so I want to do something. So the idea of getting married is doing, but this is also undoing in the form that we're talking about it today.
It's interesting too that if you throw the word out wedding or marriage on planet Earth, then it has a context, and that context is it's an event. Yeah. I've talked to women who said, I visualized my wedding since I was 7 years old, and I visualized my wedding day for years and years and years, sometimes 10, 15, 20, 30 years, to visualizing this day, and this day is an event. And so what we can say is, when we talk about an event, events only could even seem to exist on the timeline. There are no events in eternity. If everything is pure spirit and oneness, then any event would be to try to take a small little scene out of the quantum field, to use a quantum physics term, the quantum field where everything is connected, everything's pure energy, everything's unified. That's why they call it the unified field. But to pull an event out of the quantum field and give it a name, wedding or marriage or whatever, is no different than trying to pull a glass out of the quantum field. It's the same thing. Pulling an event called marriage is the same as pulling this glass. And that's why in the workbook of A Course in Miracles, Jesus says, you could receive vision. He's talking about the vision of Christ, the light beyond this world. You could receive vision from a table if you removed all of your ideas, he says in the workbook, from the table. So size, shape, texture, color, covering, height, width, that sound has a lot of past associations with it. If I go like that on a table, already the egoic mind has a determination for that table. This has a wood association, this has a tile, so you see that even the sounds, everything that's perceived is coming from an association of separation, including the event called marriage. It has to come from a past reference. How would you know what a marriage would be? And then the other thing that's funny about marriages is, and the funny thing about events is, they seem to be subject to a number of things. One of them, though, is happen or don't happen. Did the wedding happen, or did the wedding not happen? You see how true marriage of, we'll call it the union of spirit, there's not a question of happen or not happen. Isness isn't subject to happenings or not happenings. And then we get deeper into this idea of hypotheticals, because here we are in this instance right now, and then the wedding, the question about the wedding becomes what? A hypothetical question. It's the Course in the clarification of terms, Jesus says the mind is described as if, he puts as if, Jesus puts them in italics. Mind is described as if it has two parts, which is what the Course is about, right mind and wrong mind. The mind is described as if, and he puts those two words out of that whole sentence in italics. So whatever is an event on, we'll say, the event horizon, any event in time and space has to be an as-if event. And as if what? As if what? As if the separation occurred. Because the whole teachings of the Course are that the atonement is total escape from the past and a complete lack of interest in the future. That's how he defines atonement. So you can see how this zooms into an experience. Total escape from the past, complete lack of interest in the future. That fits in with our no ambition thing. So basically, marriage, as it's described in this world, is on the timeline, but you are asking it the question of how do I perceive the marriage in a helpful way? That's your question. Now, having all said what I said, the only thing that could make anything helpful at all with regard to the symbols of the world is one simple question. What is the purpose? Because if it, first of all, doesn't have any true existence, it's just a symbol. It's actually a symbol of symbol twice removed from reality, because when we use the word marriage, we're into twice removed from reality of that. But what is it for? So, you know, in our talks with Sally Ann on Skype last night, in my talks with Yanni during the drive down here, after he picked us up at the airport and everything, and I was in the front seat saying, I really enjoy your ancestors. You did Plato and Socrates. Oh yeah. You know, I was really going with the core of why I'm in Greece, or why I seem to be in Greece, is for the depth of the wisdom of the ancient Greeks who sat in the pools all day long. They didn't build, they didn't have careers, they did nothing. They sat in the hot tub all day long, pondering one question: what is it for? That's why they weren't out building statues and Roman columns. It was the neighbors over there in Italy. And we still have the Catholic Church and all that over there. You know, that's what happens when you start building.
Yep, they went kind of crazy.
Beware of building. Sit in the pool and meditate and contemplate and ponder before you move the baby finger to start to build, because look what we've got next door. I haven't been there ever, so I'm just talking about hypothetical. Somebody's told me that they have a lot of columns over there, and Caesar, and gosh, all these kind of things, but it's this building idea. That was the problem of the whole thing. So what is a wedding for? And then, that's what I shared with Sally Ann, it's for joy, it's for love. When people have said, I was in Dallas, Texas one time, a suburb north of Dallas, and I was hosted by an Indian family, and the husband who invited me there, his name was Arvind, he was an Indian man. And then we would have these sessions in the morning, sessions in the afternoon, and then actually in the middle of the day, everybody brought food. So they had like 6 cakes and pies, and it was this giant Course in Miracles retreat potluck. And as we all came together and we're cutting the food, and it's vegetarian meat and everything in there, huge thing. Arvind gets his glass and he goes, David, 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 David. Every time we eat a bite of food, we are reinforcing the separation. Every time we eat and chew and digest the food, and look at all the food we've got, we are reinforcing the separation. This is Arvind Kumar. So I said, that is not a reason to eat. So he said, David, okay then, please tell us. And I said, why do you eat, Arvind? Why do I eat? Why do I eat? I eat because I'm hungry. I said, that is not a good enough reason to eat. That is not a good enough reason to eat. There has to be more reinforcing the separation with every bite and chewing. It can't end there. It can't. There's reincarnation ideas in there, karma ideas. That is not. Even in the Matrix, one of the matrices, because this is our karma. Why are you as well? It is our karma. I had that question just recently in Portugal. But what is karma? And I said, didn't you ever hear the Beatles? Instant karma. John Lennon solved that one in his song Instant Karma. But so they said, okay, everybody, let's hear it. David, why shall we eat? And I said, we will eat for joy.
Yeah.
That is the only thing. It is a celebration of our creation by God. It is a celebration of the Christ. It is a celebration of divine innocence. It is the celebration of who we are. We will eat for joy. It's like, okay, everybody, you heard it from David. We will eat for joy. And it was an extremely joyful lunch because the focus had shifted from the metaphysics. This was like taking an intellectual understanding of the Course and projecting it onto chewing and eating the food. We are reinforcing the separation every time we eat. No, there are no actions in this world that reinforce the separation. Jesus says, it is with your thoughts alone that we must work. He never goes into morality. He never gets into ethics. He never gets into... Some even spiritual teachers talk about right action. And Jesus never really gets into right action even. That's a common word in some spiritualities, right action. He's always talking about right-mindedness. And what right-mindedness is it's causation. All right-mindedness is seeing that your mind is causative and you are not at the mercy of anything of this world. That nothing of the world has the power to give you peace or take it away. There's no causation in the world. There's nothing in form. Food doesn't make you fat. The lack of food doesn't make you skinny. Caffeine doesn't keep you up at night. You know, you could go on and on and on with thousands of what Jesus calls spurious cause-effect relationships, which are much ado about nothing, as Shakespeare said, because they're all based on that. So actually, the short answer to your question is in the hypothetical situation that there is an event called a wedding, it would have to be for joy. It couldn't actually be for another reason, and that's why it's, you know, we're asked not to seek for the truth, but to seek and find everything that blocks us from the awareness of love's presence. We're asked to look for the obstacles. We're not asked to seek for what is true. We're actually told at one point to seek for what is false. If you're going to be a seeker, Jesus says, don't seek for the truth. Don't be a truth seeker, be a false seeker. Because the false is what blocks you from the truth. The truth just is, and everything that you value that is held as important is a block to the awareness of that truth. So typically, why do people get married? On the linear timeline, they get married for sometimes financial security. They get married for the sex. They get married for the sex. They get married for the sex. I remember one time I was reading this researcher named Cher Haidt, and she interviewed all these single people and all these married couples. And she gave them all these questions, and she said to all the married couples, what is the greatest thing about being married? And what is the worst thing about being married? Then she turned to the single people and she said, what is the greatest thing about being single? What's the worst thing about being single? Guess what the answers were? Overwhelmingly, the married couple said the greatest thing about being married was intimacy. And the worst thing about being married was loss of freedom. They interviewed the single people. What's the greatest thing about being single? Freedom. And what's the worst thing about being single? Loneliness, isolation, lack of intimacy. Now, we come above Cher Haidt to the Master Jesus. And what does Jesus have to say? He says, freedom is not of the body. He says, what do you want? Freedom of the body or freedom of the mind? For both you cannot have. You have to make a choice between freedom of the body and freedom of the mind. What is freedom of the body? Freedom of mobility. All the people that were single, freedom to travel, freedom of mobility of the body, not tied down by family life, not tied down by attachment. Don't you see these categories of humans coming in? They're trying to answer anything that goes in the direction of believing that you can actually have freedom in a body is part of a distortion, is part of an egoic belief that you can actually find freedom in and through the body. When Jesus says the only use of the body is an instrument for the Holy Spirit, it's a communication device for the Holy Spirit. He says that in a number of places. He actually slips one zinger in there. Some of people have never found it in the Course, but I found it. The body has no purpose. He actually slips it in there. He slips a Mickey in the whole thing. It was too strong for the ego to say that, but he, soul's communication, and then there's no purpose. Because forgiveness, in the end, when you go back into the unified field, where does this is gone in the happy dream, it's gone in the forgiven world, it's gone in thinking of it as something in and of itself. It's just back into the field, it's back in the dance with everything else. So, and I think that's the same thing with the freedom for the single people, and then it's the same for the intimacy, because Jesus says, minds are joined, bodies do not. That's pretty clear. That addresses intimacy. That you won't achieve revelation, through the body. That's purely an identification and an opening to the great rays in the mind. But that, if you really start to see that, you see that intimacy attempted through the ego's means of finding intimacy results in still unfulfillment. And we could say that even with marriage attempts, that's one of the biggest reasons. Maybe financial security could be one, could be, sex, it could be the procreation of the species, believing in linear time and thinking you have to, Virginia Woolf, procreate, and so on and so forth. Really, if we look at our reasonings, you can start to see as you go through it that there must be a reason for marriage that's beyond any of those things, because they're all temporary. They're actually part of the hiding instead of the finding. It's for seek not outside yourself or it will fail. Jesus says, and you will weep each time an idol falls. So anytime the purpose is for trying to fill a gap, they always say, I had to meet my other half. Or sometimes they even use better half. There's a little comparison in that. Meet my better half. I don't know if I want to. If you're that lacking, I don't know if I would really want to meet your better half. Because that's the sense of trying to look for fulfillment in another, in duality. And that's the most common thing. It's almost like you and me against the world. Sometimes it feels like you and me against the world. It's like batten down the hatches. It's a hostile, vicious world. And I find my soulmate, so when all the others fall away, you can count on me to stay. You see, it's like batten down the hatches. We've got a hell of a storm called linear time. It's like the perfect storm for the ego. It's the storm that's unsolvable. It's the storm that never seems to stop while you're in it. Death, sickness, disease, hammering you. Get your insurance, quick! Do some aerobics. Get your heart rate up, nutrition. You better watch what you eat. Because death, the grim reaper, is always there, ready to take your life. Or you're caught in a storm, a tsunami or something, like a little leaf snuffed out. Because it's a death wish, this whole world is. So oftentimes that's another reason why the idea of marriage comes in, is this companionship. And Jesus actually addresses companionship even in the Course. Does anybody remember what he says? He says, you really believe you are alone unless you are with another person.
That's true.
He actually is addressing companionship as specialness, companionship as a defense against the truth. Like sickness, 136, sickness is a defense against the truth. Ultimately, companionship, remember, it's a concept, is a defense against the truth. And that's another reason why people get married. If you have to really look at the reasons to get married, if our couple reviews my teachings today, after the fact, we might even talk about a few of these things when they come. But this is what it comes down to. It's not really a question of should I get married or should I stay single. It's more a question of what is the purpose? Am I going to give this symbol of a couple or whatever over to the Holy Spirit to use to unwind my mind from every single concept that I believe? Am I going to use the mirroring of that for the purpose of letting go of everything? Like Buddha said, empty your mind. For emptying your mind of everything, then that would be a worthy purpose. That would be the answer. That's a long answer. I gave the short answer 10 minutes ago. So it gives us, steady our feet, our Father. Like, how do we come to stability and steadiness? Steady our feet. Let me see. Let me truly see what this is about. It's more, not what am I going to get out of the marriage, but what am I going to give?
What is my purpose?
What's my purpose? Now this is a ring, and it's on a finger. I use it for illustrative purposes. It's a circle, it has no beginning and no end. So it's a symbol, people call it a ring or whatever. It's not representing an event on the timeline. It's just a device, it's a symbol being used by the Holy Spirit right now as a reminder of our purpose, which is not, doesn't have beginnings and ends. You can't say, I'm going to begin forgiveness today, and I hope to reach the end of it. What's the thing you like to say in your gathering recently? Francis looked at the crowd, everyone was saying, how many steps are there in forgiveness? Is it 2 steps, 3 steps, and everything?
12 steps.
12 steps?
16. We are the living forgiveness.
We are the living forgiveness. Or I like what you said, I am forgiveness. She spoke the truth. And then we got an email this morning from that gathering where somebody showed up as a devotee. I want to come and, I see that you are teaching mysticism. I won't even bother to talk about what's going on in my timeline. I just want to come, give myself over to that. I am forgiveness. Yes, that was beautiful. It was a beautiful email. I saw that. She CC'd her partner too, so that's good. That'll be interesting. It's fun to see how it plays out. But she was making her stand. Like, I recognize and I want to devote myself to that recognition of I am forgiveness. Because Francis was speaking too, that forgiveness isn't specific. The Bible said forgive 7 times 70. And I've already tried that. That's 490 times I already did that. It didn't work. But it was just meaning a lot. But actually it's not really a lot. Forgiveness is a state of mind. It's a presence in which you see the false as false. It doesn't really apply to forgiving Aunt Jane or Uncle Fred, forgiving your mother, forgiving your father, forgiving your son, your daughter. It's way, 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 way beyond that. And it seems to be a practice, but it's actually not a practice at all. It's actually a presence. Inspired by joy, inspired by happiness.
We have new people.
Oh,